Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So this is part 2, which I promised you guys I would do. So I am a woman of my word, so I'm sticking to that. And I just wanted to cover a bit more of what she said. Now, she went on for quite a while, for over 20 minutes. And she really did try and force her point across that her opinion counts and Harry's opinion counts. And they have been hard done by in some weird, strange way. I'm trying to figure out how she herself has been hard done by as she sits in a mansion which she never ever would have been able to afford if she would have stayed on Suits, on top of jumping on and off of private planes for the last 2 years, which she certainly wasn't doing in her early, mid or late 20s. Just got to get that out there. So she carried on to bang on about her husband and how fantastic he is and how fantastic it would be and the world would be a better place if Harry could vote, and how important it is to vote. And I definitely think that this interview is giving us just a small indication of where she is going to be using her voice and what kind of direction her career possibly is going to be going into. Now, it seems as though it's definitely politics that she has her eye on. All I can say is God help America if Meghan does go into politics, because we know that half of the things that she would do in the White House would certainly be self-serving. Now, that's just my personal opinion. So I'm going to carry on with what exactly was said. She hopes the 19th, which bills itself as a non-profit, non-partisan newsroom reporting at the intersection of gender, politics and policy, will help lead the way in the kind of reporting she wants to see. People are craving a change, she said. I think in a place that we're all in right now, people are starting to question the systems that we've always believed in, where we are getting our information from as well. And that is true. We are in a climate of questioning and self-doubt and doubting what we're being told. I know that in March, when everybody was panic buying due to this impending pandemic, which we didn't understand, no one really believed the words stay calm, especially when Boris Johnson said stay calm and wash your hands to the sound of happy birthday. Everybody went nuts, and that was global. It wasn't just because of him, but over here, if you understand, not everybody is a big fan of the Tories. People were questioning what was real and what was fiction. So I can see where she's coming from with that. I'm going to carry on a bit. I think, you want to have trust in journalism, and you want to have trust in what you're reading and hope that it's fact. We've become so sadly comfortable with the idea that we are just getting all this stuff and it becomes noise as opposed to truth and accurate journalism. So I think if this can be the catalyst for other news organisations, my goodness, it's going to change the game so much. Meghan and Harry are people who have proclaimed that they really want to make a major change in the world, and they really want to improve people's lives, especially those who are economically disadvantaged. For those who are black, this is what they claim. They're very much behind the Black Lives Matter movement. But from what we've all witnessed, in true reality, they do not care about the ecosystem or global warming or reducing CO2 emissions, because they have enjoyed boarding private planes. They have now purchased an extremely elaborate mansion that is definitely going to add to their carbon footprint. So really they don't care about reducing carbon emissions or their global footprint. That is not really a factual proclamation from the pair. From what we can see from Meghan and Harry, their actions tell a completely different story to what it is they profess to care about. Meghan really has an extremely big issue with the way in which she has been depicted in the media, and this is no secret. She's suing the Mail Online, the Daily Mail, and the Sun. This is not a secret. She's also suing a Canadian media publication, a Splash News, for pictures of her walking in the woods with baby Archie. But it seems as though that's the only thing she's really concerned about. She seems to only be concerned with what directly affects her life. And as I said in my previous post, I understand it. It can't be nice to go online and pull up articles about yourself that aren't favourable, but it's all being self-induced. If people are criticising you and they're not saying favourable things about you, that should be a motivator for you to go and fix those issues that you feel are stifling to your progress, stifling to your new life that you're trying to start. We can see they're in America, they're trying to start this new life. Leave it behind. But her and Harry really have a very difficult time in doing that. I feel as though Meghan does have some regrets about the way in which she spent her time in the UK. And I think that she has become bitter about the negative press that she now receives, but not just bitter. I think she realizes that her credibility has been remarkably damaged indefinitely. She will always go down as the woman who used her relationship with this British prince to level up. There's nothing wrong with that. People are doing far worse things nowadays to get up there, to change their life, to improve their prospects. People do these things, and that's not the only way in which someone is judged. But there's something about having tact when you do it, and also being able to maintain likability. It's her lack of gratitude. It's her lack of work ethic. It's her lack of attention to detail. She lacks humility. She reeks of arrogance, entitlement, a superiority complex. She reeks of it. And for her to complain about the way in which her and H have been depicted in the media is just quite painful for me to watch. Because here stands a lady who 4 years ago, 3 years ago, really wasn't on anyone's radar. We didn't know who she was at all. And she's had everything rolled out at her feet, the full red carpet, the 9 yards, and she simply turned her nose up at it. And she's swatted the UK away like you would swat a fly away at your dining table. And that's the issue. And now, not only that, she wants to tarnish everyone else with this toxic title, and she doesn't want to do any internal work on herself. Well, Megsy, I'm sorry, but the world just simply doesn't work like that. I'm going to elaborate, and this is the last bit I'm going to cover of this interview because I'm actually quite annoyed at the audacity of it all. She carries on to say, we've become so sadly comfortable with the idea that we are just getting all this stuff and it becomes noise as opposed to truth and accurate journalism. On the subject of influence in the media, Meghan said she was recently reading an article about suffragettes and how the term was initially coined by a man in 1906 to belittle the women involved. What I find so fascinating is that before digital media, before the online space, before things could travel around the world with rapid fire. And the American women who started the suffrage movement didn't want to be called suffragettes. Yet the term, she said, stuck. When you look at that, and when you look at it through the lens of the power of one person's influence in the media to be able to shape an entire movement or way of thinking or an ideology or an identification, if women have their voice heard as equally, how different that would have been, she said. What stuck with her about the article was the ability of influence, and if it's only coming from a patriarchal lens, how that's shaping everything we see. I think it's often challenging for men and women alike for people to remember just how hard it was to get the right to vote and be really aware of not taking that for granted, she said. Look at my husband, for example. He's never been able to vote, and I think it's such an interesting thing to say. The right to vote is not a privilege, it's a right in and of itself. She added that women's voices are needed now more than ever, and the best way to exercise that is through voting. There is still so much work to do. We think about the Voting Rights Act, and how even at this point, I was having this conversation just yesterday, it feels like we make so many strides forward and yet there is still so much more to do. Then she was actually questioned about the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd come back after being away for so long. I haven't lived in the States for 10 years. I lived in Canada for 7 years for work, so a really long lapse of time from being here. To come back and to just see the state of affairs, I think at the onset, if I'm being honest, it was just devastating. It was just sad to see where our country was at that moment. If there was any silver lining in that, in the weeks that were happening after the murder of George Floyd, in the peaceful protests that we're seeing, in the voices that were coming out, in the way that people were actually owning their role and acknowledging their role that they played either actively or passively in the discrimination of other people, specifically of the Black community, it shifted from sadness to a feeling of absolute inspiration because I can see that the tide is turning. I think for so many of us, it is very easy to focus on the negativity because it's what you hear out there. The loudest voices are often the negative ones, sadly. So I think from my standpoint, it's not new to see this undercurrent of racism and certainly unconscious bias, but I think to see the changes that are being made right now is really something that I look forward to being a part of and being a part of using my voice in a way I haven't been able to of late. So yeah, it's good to come home, she said. I think that was sarcastically said. It's good to come home. You left a whole country due to alleged racism against yourself. And now, no offense, Americans, but you've gone to a place whereby racial divide is at an all-time high. The killing of George Floyd was terrible, but all I have to say, Megzy, is that it didn't happen in the country that you have branded and labelled as intrinsically racist. Guys, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave it there, but you get my drift. Megzy, at it again, talking about herself, playing the victim. What more can I say? I'll be back with another video, guys.